Everyone's watching OpenAI battle Google in San Francisco, but Anthropic just made a strategic move that might reshape the entire AI market. They've started localizing Claude's pricing for India, and that's way more significant than it sounds at first. Here's why this matters. India is Anthropic's biggest market outside the United States. Think about that for a second. Company that built Claude, a genuinely competitive alternative to ChatGPT, isn't just focusing on wealthy Western users. They're building a foothold in a country with over 1.4 billion people, where most developers and students can't afford United States dollar pricing. This localization isn't just a business move. It's a bet that the future of AI adoption isn't in San Francisco or Silicon Valley. It's in cities like Bangalore, Mumbai, and Delhi. Anthropic releasing Claude at locally relevant prices in India tells us something crucial about where the real growth is happening in AI. While the tech press obsesses over OpenAI's latest feature drop or Google's newest multimodal model, Anthropic is quietly executing the strategy that actually builds market dominance. They're making Claude accessible to hundreds of millions of potential users who've never been able to afford it before. The move also signals something else. Anthropic believes they've built a product good enough to win globally, not just in markets where users have unlimited budgets. To understand why Anthropic made this move, you need to understand India's position in the AI economy right now. India has become one of the world's fastest-growing AI talent hubs. The country produces hundreds of thousands of software engineers every year, more than any other nation on Earth. If you've used tech support, worked with an outsourced developer, or interacted with a startup, there's a solid chance you've dealt with Indian engineers. They're everywhere in tech, and they are hungry for tools. Here's the scale we're talking about. India's AI market is projected to grow from roughly $20 billion in 2024 to over $100 billion by 2030. That's 5 times bigger in just 6 years. For context, that kind of growth rate makes India's AI market one of the fastest expanding sectors in the global economy. The problem? Western AI tools are priced for Western incomes. A ChatGPT Plus subscription costs $20 a month. That's roughly 1,600 Indian rupees. For a junior developer earning 300,000 rupees a month, that subscription eats up more than 0.5% of their income. It's not cheap. It's a barrier. Anthropic looked at this market and realized something obvious to anyone paying attention. You can't build dominance in a market where your product is priced out of reach for the majority of potential users. So what does localization actually mean? It's not just translating the interface into Hindi, though Anthropic has done some of that. It's fundamentally about changing how much Claude costs in the local market. In India, Claude pricing now uses Indian rupees instead of dollars. Anthropic has structured the pricing so that an Indian user pays a percentage of what a United States user would pay, reflecting the difference in purchasing power between the two markets. This is standard economics. A dollar in the United States buys less than a dollar's equivalent worth of rupees does in India, so businesses adjust prices downward for developing markets. Here's what this means in practice. Where a United States developer might pay $20 for Claude's Pro plan, an Indian developer now pays roughly 600 rupees. That's about $7 or $8. That's a massive difference. It's the gap between this feels like a luxury subscription I'll think twice about, and this is genuinely affordable. Anthropic also localized payment methods. Indian users can now pay with local payment systems rather than needing a foreign credit card or a United States bank account. That removes friction. You can't sell to people if they can't actually give you money. This is what market penetration looks like in the real world. You don't win a developing market with the same playbook as wealthy nations. You meet customers where they are, literally, culturally, and financially. Let's look at what this means for actual Indian users. A startup founder in Bangalore can now use Claude for customer support automation at a price that makes business sense for a growing company. A university student in Delhi preparing for placements can access Claude's analytical capabilities without spending money she doesn't have. A freelancer working on contract jobs can use Claude to boost their productivity without pricing themselves out of the tool market. Before localization, these users had 2 choices: pay Western pricing if they had access to dollars, or use free or cheaper alternatives like open-source models. Most chose option 2. Now they have a third path. They get a genuinely competitive product at a price that's actually reasonable for their income level. The numbers here are telling. India has over 8 million software developers. Compare that to the United States, which has roughly 4 million. India already has more coders than the entire United States. What happens when you give 8 million developers access to an AI assistant that costs 10% of what it costs in America? You're suddenly serving a market that's twice the size of the entire American developer population at a price they can actually afford. That changes which company owns that market. It's not complicated. When you make your product affordable in a massive market, you win that market. Here's where the contrast gets interesting. How are other AI companies approaching India? OpenAI launched ChatGPT globally, but kept United States dollar pricing everywhere. They did eventually add some local payment methods, but the price stayed roughly the same across borders. If you're in India, ChatGPT Plus costs essentially the same as it costs in New York. For wealthy users, that's fine. For the massive market of middle-class and emerging tech talent, it's a barrier. Google has taken a different approach with Gemini. They've been quietly building features specifically for Indian users, language support for Indian languages, integration with Indian payment systems, and more recently, starting to localize pricing. But they've been slower and less aggressive than Anthropic. Meta, through their partnerships with Llama, has been pushing open-source models that anyone can run locally. That's a different strategy entirely. They're not selling access, they're giving away the tool and betting on ecosystem lock-in. Anthropic's move is distinctive because it's aggressive and explicit. They're not just adding local payment methods, they are fundamentally restructuring pricing to make the product competitive in India's market. That's a bet that they want to own a huge chunk of India's AI market, and they're willing to take lower per-user revenue to get it. The competitive message is clear. Anthropic sees India as the future battleground, and they are moving now while competitors are still figuring out their strategy. What does this actually mean for the future of AI adoption worldwide? Right now, AI is concentrated in wealthy nations. The United States, Europe, and parts of Asia have the infrastructure, the funding, and the purchasing power to drive AI adoption. But here's the thing, most of the world's population lives outside those wealthy bubbles. If AI is going to actually transform global industries, it has to work in markets where people can't afford San Francisco pricing. Anthropic's move signals that they think differently about this. They are betting that localized pricing in emerging markets isn't leaving money on the table. It's the strategy for building a genuinely global company. And they are probably right. Think about where the next wave of innovation comes from. It doesn't always come from Silicon Valley. Sometimes it comes from communities that are forced to solve problems with limited resources. When millions of developers in India have access to Claude at a price they can pay, you're going to see innovation in that market. You're going to see Indian companies building AI products. You're going to see Indian developers solving problems that Western tech companies haven't even noticed yet. This is also a signal to the AI industry more broadly. Pricing matters. Accessibility matters. The company that wins the global race isn't going to be the one that charges the highest price in the richest markets. It's going to be the one that moves fastest to serve the biggest potential markets at prices those markets can actually pay. If you're an Indian user wanting to try Claude now, here's what the experience looks like. You head to Claude AI, you create an account, you select India as your country, and the interface adjusts. Payment options change to show local Indian payment systems. Pricing displays in Indian rupees instead of dollars. It feels normal, not like you're shopping at an American store and struggling with currency conversion. From there, it's straightforward. You can choose between Claude's free tier, which gives you basic access, or Claude Pro, which unlocks faster responses and higher limits. Pro costs around 600 rupees per month. That's roughly what a good meal costs in India or a couple of coffees. For an individual developer or student, it's a reasonable expense. The localization goes deeper than just pricing. Anthropic has been adding support for Indian languages. While English remains the primary interface language, the company has been expanding language capabilities to recognize Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, and other major Indian languages. That makes Claude genuinely useful for Indian language work, not just English language tasks. For teams and businesses, Anthropic has also launched Claude for Work subscriptions with team management features and higher usage limits. Indian companies can now use Claude as part of their standard software stack without worrying about per-user costs becoming a barrier to scaling. Here's what this means for you if you're paying attention to the AI race. Anthropic just signaled something important about how they think the future unfolds. Most attention in tech focuses on feature announcements, benchmark scores, and who released the most impressive model. Those things matter, but they're not the whole game. Winning markets is about execution, strategy, and understanding where growth actually lies. Anthropic looked at the board and decided that India, a massive, fast-growing market with hungry engineers and developers, matters more than maintaining the same price point everywhere. That's a bet on the future of AI being global, not American. It's a bet that the killer applications for AI, the ones that create real value and drive real adoption, aren't going to emerge exclusively from Silicon Valley. They're going to emerge from developers worldwide who finally have affordable access to these tools. Watch for this pattern spreading. Over the next year, you're going to see more AI companies localizing pricing for emerging markets. You're going to see more languages, more payment methods, more aggressive pushes into Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The companies that move fast on this will own huge chunks of markets that Western tech companies have mostly ignored. For Indian users, developers, and companies, this is your moment. You finally have access to a competitive AI assistant at a price that makes sense. What you build with it matters, not just for India, but for the whole world. Follow for daily AI news and stay tuned for how this reshapes the industry.